In this next part of the conversation, I talk with Leanne Romans and Jocelyn Bertram. Leanne is the chair of Kempenfelt Community Players, who have long used the Georgian Theatre. We talked right after the initial news of the theatre came out, and much has happened since then. But what hasn't changed is the central place the Georgian Theatre has in the KCP's past and plans for the future. Next, I talked to Jocelyn Bertram, who's an avid musical fan and performer, and also publishes the blog and podcast, Both Sides of the Curtain. First, here's my conversation with Leanne.
My name is Leanne Romans. I am currently the board chair for Kempenfelt Community Players. Kempenfelt Community Players is a volunteer-run organization, and it is, if you will, driven or managed by currently a 9-member board. We have a tremendous group of individuals who, between long-term history with KCP and some of our newer, younger members, we've got a great mix of energy around the board and certainly commitment.
And when you mentioned earlier that the Georgian Theatre was really the Kempenfelt Community Players' home, could you explain a little bit more about that? Like, what made it your home? Why was there such a strong connection between your group and that space?
In the most basic of terms, it is because of the venue's structure and size. So it presented the most viable local option for our organization to stage the kinds of musicals. We are focused, our tagline is making musicals memorable. You could look at it that we are strongly based in being able to put as many people on stage as we can. So we need a decent sized stage, and we need a certain audience capacity to reach that level of financial feasibility. It's expensive to, pay out the licensing and royalties. It's, costs relating to sets and designs and costumes and all of those things. So it really does come down to a bit of financial modeling. Though I will mention the relationship goes so far as to when KCP secured we have a studio workshop in Barrie that we operate, not right now, but in the back was a workshop area that in fact was sized to the specifics of Georgian theatre. So it gave us that, you could call it an economy of scale. When we were building a set, we could do it efficiently to fit into that theater. The reality is there was nothing else in Barrie then or now that fits into this niche.
I was wondering, for people that may think in the age of Netflix, in the age of always accessible TV, they might say, why is there a need for local theater? Why is there a need to go see a show? Could you kind of address that? Why do you think it's so important to have the local theater presence?
Really, for a whole host of reasons. I recognize that there are certainly people out there who are not live theater fans. But in fact, there is a significant portion of the population that loves the experience. It is to engage with a group on stage who are, singing and dancing and acting. It is a soul-based experience, really, for so many people. And it teaches so much in terms of, I'm not sure if you're aware, but one of our shows is our Young Company show. And what we do there is we provide an opportunity for kids who are not sports-based. They're arts, they're creative. It's an opportunity for them to engage with their community and explore their talents and gain skills of all descriptions. It builds confidence. It creates better social interaction. It improves communication skills. It engages people in a community with common dialogue and purpose. And that's something I think that filters all the way down, whether it's the people behind the stage, the people on the stage, or the people in front of the stage. It's a shared experience. and one that has been around for quite literally thousands of years, that has provided, so much value to the communities it exists in.
Yeah, and I know as a student too, I grew up in Aurelia, but I remember going down to see shows in that theater too. And I know
Did you really?
yeah, so it's such an accessible way. I think your website said something like 5,000 students in the past number of years have gone to see shows produced by KC Theater.
Last year, or sorry, not last year, 2019, was 5,000 kids that year. We were adding school matinees in order to accommodate the interest that was coming from, and it's, it's the public school board, it's the Catholic school board, and it's all kinds of private educators, home educators. And so even that is bringing all of these kids together in this common arena and giving them something to consider in life. And it also teaches them, the skills of being in a theater and sitting quietly. And, so there's all kinds of levels.
And next up is Jocelyn Bertram. She's a musical theater performer and publishes a blog, Both Sides of the Curtain, which dives into all aspects of musical theater. She also grew up going to Georgian performances, and we really dive into what the theater meant for her and her hopes moving forward. To start off, I'll just get you to introduce yourself and kind of your role and how you've kind of interacted with the theater community in Barrie.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Jocelyn Bertram. I am a musical theater performer, creator, and I'm also the editor of a theater blog called Both Sides of the Curtain. I currently live in Innisfil, Ontario. It's where I grew up. And obviously, since I went into theater, theater's always been such a huge part of my life. And I think a lot of that is thanks to the amazing theater community that Barrie has. We are a city that is so rich with arts and culture that somebody, even though we're not in, say, like Toronto or somewhere that's considered to be a huge theater hub, we are a hub for so many things. And so from a young age, it was dance, it was drama camps at various theater companies in the area. We would see community shows, and that kind of instilled that love in me, that passion that, I took with me. I went to high school, I graduated, I went to school for musical theater in Windsor. And, currently I just finished a production in December that was a full Zoom musical. It was really exciting. It was a pantomime. And other than that, I am just, sitting back and watching the theater community thrive during this time, despite everything that's been thrown at it. And I'm so glad to kind of have a front row seat to all of that.
For sure. And you brought up so many interesting points there that I want to come back to, specifically what it's like to be a theater performer as well as a critic and fan during this time. But first, I'll maybe take you back in time. And how has the Georgian Theatre kind of interacted with your love of theater and growing up?
Yes, I love the Georgian Theatre. I actually think it's the first stage I ever performed on, like when I was like maybe 2 or 3 with like a ballet recital. I remember being there very vaguely. I remember performing, and I remember like leaving the theater afterwards, like with my whole family. And so that's my first memory of the Georgian Theatre. The next one, I think I saw a Kempenfelt Community Players production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I was hooked. It is still one of my favorite musicals to this day. And when I started dancing competitively, that's where our year-end recitals were. So for 5 years, I was performing at the Georgian every spring.
So you know that stage in and out, and you've been in that room for many hours.
I have. I think it's such a brilliant venue.
Yeah, and why is it, for people that may not be involved in theater, why is it so important to have that sort of like large theater space in a town like Barrie?
Yeah, so of course, I'm going to get really specific, I think, kind of about this, because Barrie has so many groups of performing artists and so many performing arts groups who do different things. You have at least a dozen dance studios who go to the Georgian to have their recitals and that sort of thing. And then you have everything up to big professional theater productions, such as ones hosted by Theater by the Bay or Kempenfelt Community Players. No, not, sorry. Whew. You can just cut that part out, right? Such as Talk is Free Theater or Theater by the Bay, who have these huge, beautiful professional productions. You have gorgeous pieces of community theater. And it's something that's really accessible to so many. And I think we do have a couple other theater venues, the main other one being the 5 Point Center at downtown Barrie, but it's pretty much double the seating. So especially in this time, it is so important to have a large theater, because when we do get to go back to the theater, which will hopefully be very soon, we're not going to be able to sit side by side everybody. We'll have to go by bubble. We'll have to social distance. And for any show that is going to put in the work and the effort to create something during this time, to bring in, maybe not even break even, but you're going to need that amount of space, like, to sit people apart, right? Because we want people to be safe. And I think it's also worth mentioning that they're two very different theater spaces. So if you've been inside the Georgian Theatre, you know that, the stage is raised, you have your proscenium arch, it has flies, it's fully equipped in a lot of ways. Whereas something like the Mady Center, it's not the Mady Center anymore, it's the 5 Point Center. Okay. It has all of those wonderful things, but the stage, it doesn't have a huge rage stage. It's a very small, intimate venue, which, if you're like me and you love theater, I saw Hedvig and the Angry Inch last 2 years ago down there at the 5 Points, and it was the perfect venue for something that was cabaret style and raw and gritty and in your face. Whereas something like Joseph, you need a bigger stage to do because you have a bigger cast. I think also in terms of like backstage room and dressing room areas, as well as just the audience size. So it's not just how many people can come and see the show, it's how much room do the people working on the production have to play with. Another thing is that parking. Parking is a big thing. Okay. So at Georgian, luckily, there are big, beautiful parking spots. There are ways to park through the college. Like, there's a place to park. Even if you do have to pay for it, you can still park there. Whereas for something downtown, like the 5 Point Center, you kind of park where you can, right? So that's another thing that just makes it that much more accessible to other people.
Okay, I get you. And all these things that you're mentioning, I'm sure have been felt as well by so many members of the community that uses that theater. And as you mentioned too, that's a wide array of groups. But I was wondering, for you personally, how did it feel to first hear the news that the theater was closing down? And we know like a lot has happened since then, but just when you first heard the news, what kind of went through your mind?
It was kind of like being punched in the stomach a little bit. I feel like that's a dramatic, bit of a dramatic answer, but it was really sad, especially because I have so many beautiful memories. I have such a community of people in my life through dance, through theater, who, so many of our memories are there. So much was made there. So much was, given there. And it was really hard to read, to find it on Facebook. And I am so grateful to, I'm losing the name, but it was somebody at Barrie Today who posted the article on it. And I'm so grateful to them, because if they hadn't posted that article, I wouldn't have found out about it, right? Anyway, I'm so glad that they did share it, and that this wonderful arts community that we have, that they have so bravely stepped up to say, like, hello, this theater, we need a theater like this. And also that, it's not something you can just easily cut in a budget meeting. And I know that that's simplifying it and that's mincing words, but that's kind of how it feels to members, I think, of the theatrical community, to be told like, hey, you're not going to have this anymore because of this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess going forward, it seems like there is some hope for saving the Georgian.
Yes.
How does that feel?
It's good. I was in a meeting last week, and it was with other members of the Barrie theater community. Marissa Cadwell put together, or is it Caldwell? I'm not sure.
Oh, no, I can check that.
if you can check that, that would be brilliant. But she put together a Zoom call with a lot of people who are members of the community and have these concerns. And she led the meeting so wonderfully. And she let us know that, this community are talking with people on the city council right now. I know that there was a petition going around. There is, people have been sending letters to their counselors, which I think is so brilliant. And even if this ends up being a done deal, I think the fact that so many people were affected by this and have had such a strong response to this, that won't go amiss. So that's something I think that even if the theater decision goes one way or the other.
Oh, okay. And I'll just say quickly, my internet connection is a little bit slow. So if I cut out or interrupt you, that's why.
Okay, no worries.
It's the new reality in this Zoom age.
Yep.
Yeah, I was wondering for you as a young performer, someone who's worked extensively in the field and went to school for it, what place does theater have in your decision to stay in Barrie, search for other opportunities? When you think of your future, how important is it for you to have a thriving theater community in the place that you live?
Yeah, I mean, I'm up here because my family's here. It's kind of the easiest place for me to be right now. But working with a company like Theater by the Bay or Talk is Free, those are pretty high on things that I would love to do as an artist. And I think that having a theater career in Barrie for anybody, not just me, but for anybody, or even if it's not a career, if you're one of the many people who volunteers their time to create art in this community, it is so important. And not just in an I want to be on stage kind of thing. That's not what this is. For me, this is what theater in Barrie does is it provides wonderful productions that are accessible and affordable. So say if I live up here and maybe if my family didn't have enough money or the means to go down to Toronto and see a production at Mirvish, for example, you could go see a wonderful production at any one of these community theaters or the professional theaters in Barrie for a fraction of the ticket price and without having to go all the way down. So that is huge. And honestly, if Barrie hadn't had such a thriving art scene, it probably would have been very difficult for me to find out that that was what I wanted to do and where my passion was. It's because of where we live and the amazing artists who live up here that people like me have been able to go, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do when I grow up.
Oh, okay. And I was talking to Ian Mogash from Theater by the Bay, and I might have mispronounced his name there, but I kind of asked him, a lot of people on Facebook comments or people who might not know the theater community might say that in a pandemic, why are we funding theater when people can't gather together, maybe even for a year? But I was wondering for you, what role has the hope of theater or theater in general had during the pandemic? For him, he said it's been really great for his mental health to have that hope of gathering together. Mm-hmm. So many people need the arts for their mental health. But from your perspective, what role has theater had during the pandemic? And you can answer that however you want. I know that's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, gosh, well, there are so many ways to answer that, but I think the first word that comes to my head is just gratitude. I am so grateful that I have this love, passion for theater. And the thing is that theater's still going. Theater isn't dead. It isn't on pause. We just can't be together in person right now. And because of that, artists are coming up with crazy, innovative ways to keep growing and evolving. I kind of laugh sometimes because what we know as theater today, musical theater, dates all the way back to ancient Greece. So, of course, over the time, it has gone through so much. It has evolved and adapted. And that's what this is now. So whenever I see things about people being like, oh, theater's dead or theater's gone, it's no. It's just transitioning again. And that's what makes me so excited about theater, because it is resilient. It's one of the oldest professions, is being in the arts. And it's something that everybody needs right now. There's the hope that one day we're going to get back and create something beautiful together, or we're going to experience a wonderful production. But it's also been, for me, it's been about drive. Like, I have been so busy during this time, and I'm so blessed that I'm able to, right here in my room over Zoom, I can take my voice lessons, I can take dance lessons, I can meet up with my mentor. There's so much that can be done and that is being done. So it's it's not that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is good. There's good in this. And I think that goes for anybody, whether you're a member of the theater community or not. Like, take the theater out of this, as horrible of a situation that we all are in globally. I like to think that there's a silver lining, at least. Everybody has one. It's a little bit different, but there is one.
And as you mentioned too, like last week, there's a big meeting of people from the community finding ways forward, and online there's an explosion of support for the theater community. So I suppose a lot of people might, this might be what is pulling them through in some ways, right? Like that hope of gathering together in community to experience theater together. Yeah. It seems like that's a key part of it.
Yeah, and it's also that there's something so incredible about live theater, that it kind of transcends so many other things. And that might just be me being biased, but the connections that are there, it's not like just between, like if you and I were actors and people were watching this like a movie, it's not just the two of us, acting and performing. It's a bigger conversation when it's on stage. And what people crave right now is that human connection. That's why we're all on Zoom all the time. That's why we're Zoom fatigued. That's why we're bouncing against the walls. Even the most introverted of us, we just want to connect with people. And something like theater, it's a release of heightened emotion. And I think it also kind of comes down to, you mentioned mental health, but music has literal healing qualities. Like, it's a scientific thing. I'm not going to talk on it because I'm not qualified to do so. But music heals. Music brings people together. And I think live theater it's like that. You go to a show, you sit beside a stranger, you still have experienced like a moment in time. And I think we just all want to experience things together.